Hey, welcome back to the Astrology of Things. I'm your host and professional astrologer, Sheena. And in today's episode, I wanted to give an introduction on the planet of Neptune. Now, I want to give this introduction because I'm planning on doing a series of Neptune through the houses. Now, I know there are already tons of videos of Neptune through the houses, but I always find it valuable to hear the different perspectives of the meaning of Neptune through the houses through different astrologers. So that's what I'll be doing, but I did want to do this precursor video for all of you to understand the meaning and significance of Neptune. Today is August 11th and it is 7:10 p.m. And I'll even explain the weather because I think that's pertinent to Neptune. Right now it's cloudy, rainy and stormy where I am, so you might even hear some of the thunder in the background, but that will tie into Neptune when I get to that part a little later. Neptune. Of course, Neptune is a planet. It is actually one of the modern planets in astrology, and it takes about 13 to 14 years to orbit the sun. So it has a very, very slow transit. So if Neptune, wherever Neptune is in your chart natally, it's probably not too far away from where it was. Today, it's actually in Pisces at 22 degrees and it's in retrograde. Neptune is a modern planet, and in modern astrology, Neptune rules Pisces. And so if you are a Piscean or have planets in Pisces, you might have some of this energy already very prevalent in your energy. But before I go into Neptune a little bit more, I did want to mention that when we think of Neptune in a chart or horoscope, we don't necessarily have to think of Neptune through natal astrology. We can think of Neptune through horary astrology or electional astrology or mundane astrology. And so depending on through which perspective you're looking at a chart will depend on how Neptune impacts the nativity or that inception chart or the horoscope. All right, so Neptune is a planet of illusion, deception, spirituality, mysticism, mystery, reflection, imagination, visions. Wherever Neptune is placed in your chart, Neptune creates a void, or something that I call like a black hole. It creates a blank space that needs to be filled in. And so the way this space is filled in depends on, of course, Neptune's relationship to the other planets in the chart, and Neptune's dignity and ability. So understanding its power will depend on how this void or blank is filled in the chart. So, in astrology, planets create actions, events, and opportunities. So, whether that be through transit, whether it's transiting other planets, or it makes a conjunction, opposition, quincunx, a square to your natal planets, or whether even through solar arc, secondary progression, or even in the solar return chart, you'll be able to, see how Neptune is acting and how it responds when other planets interact with it. But before I go further into that, I did want to talk about Neptune's discovery. So Neptune was discovered in 1846, and around this time, this was the time when cameras were being invented and photography was being experimented with. I feel this is a very significant time because it's able to help us understand some of Neptune's energy, right? And so when you think of photography or images, you think of a device capturing a moment in time that you can see physically. You're able to develop this film and take it throughout time. And so essentially you have this picture. Let's think of physical pictures, which I know not a lot of us have these days. But think of a physical picture. You're carrying it with you through time. And the picture itself, of course, is of physical three-dimensional things, but the literal picture is two-dimensional. And so that in itself is an imagery, or it's a created imagination, or it's capturing energy that you're carrying. Neptune, the planet of Neptune, allows us to create pictures in our mind's eye. Neptune allows us to draw out pictures in this physical space. Neptune is a very magical planet. And in general, let's talk about some of the actions that are created from Neptune. And I call these action verbs because planets create action in our chart. So we can think of Neptune, let's say Neptune is a person, right? Neptune is an actor in the chart that we're looking at. So Neptune is saying, I imagine, I create, I envision, I disillusion, I reflect, I mirror, I hallucinate, I project, I mysticize, I articulate, I spiritualize, I see. I see is a very powerful one, right? Thinking about how we are able to see through our eyes. I think Neptune is very much tied to the nervous system, right? It's very much tied to Mercury. If we look at the sign that Neptune rules, which is Pisces, it's opposite Virgo. And Mercury rules Virgo, but Mercury also rules the nervous system. And it's really important for us to see the relationship between signs that are in opposition to one another, because they are essentially one and the same, but they're just at different ends of the spectrum. And so I think that's very important to think about when we think of Neptune. So to me, it does have a strong tie to Mercury, which is also interesting because Mercury falls in Mercury falls in Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune. But thinking of Pisces strongly tied to Neptune, the planet, Mercury brings its logical nature, and it's put into a space or an energy that is not logical. The Neptunian energy, the Piscean energy, is very illogical and disorderly. And saying those words, I don't like saying those words because they always have a negative connotation to them. Sometimes disorder is not a bad thing. Sometimes disorder is a good thing. Sometimes it's good to think in a way that doesn't have boundaries. Sometimes it's good to think in a way that isn't tied down to this earthly realm, because oftentimes we can get things wrong. Thinking from the earthly perspective, because things are created and they're not based or rooted in the correct system or the correct, I'd say, natural way that things work in this realm. So I kind of got on a tangent, so I need to think about where I was. I should note that I myself have Mercury in Pisces, and so I too think in a disorderly way. So you might oftentimes find me going into tangents and getting off topic, but I think sometimes it's good to kind of go with the flow. So there are pros and cons to being disorderly and order and being organized. So yeah, where was I? Okay, I think I was listing out the action verbs that we can associate with Neptune. So I think I provided a good number of examples. So let's talk about the mythology that is tied to Neptune. Now, Neptune is tied to the Greek god called Poseidon. Now, Poseidon was one of the 12 Olympian gods, and he was known as the god of the sea, the god of storms, the god of earthquakes. And, this was his realm. This was the realm that he was responsible for. Whereas, in comparison, Pluto, which is another modern planet, a modern outer planet, was associated with, the underworld, while Uranus, which is another modern outer planet, was associated with the skies and the heavens, right? And so we have Neptune that's responsible for the water, the oceans, and it's really interesting to think about Neptune through this lens of water, right? Water is very Neptunian, right? If we see water, we know how water works, right? Water fills up any container that it's added to, right? Water is formless, and Neptune is also formless. Neptune expands beyond the boundaries. Think of Saturn, the planet that creates all this physical structure. Neptune is able to go beyond that structure. It's able to go past and through that structure. Neptune is boundless. You can't necessarily capture Neptune in a box. And even if you did, thinking of water, you can capture water in a container. It's still able to exit that container because it can still evaporate, right? It changes form. It evaporates into the air, and you know, it changes form, cellular form, if you want to call it. It changes form. So it changes form from being a liquid, and it turns into a gaseous state, and it is evaporated, taken up into the air, into the clouds, which is another Neptunian form. Clouds are water droplets, condensed water droplets, right, that are traveling. And so we have these clouds that are traveling to different locations. It's not barred down by this physical space here. And so I'm just trying to help you all think about some of the ways that you can see Neptune in your everyday environment, right? And so in that way, Neptune is very elusive. It's hard to capture. It's hard to read, essentially. Because what you see on the outside might not be what it truly is on the inside. And in that way, Neptune is very creates hallucinations, gives hallucinations. It creates or injects things that aren't physically reachable or touchable or logical, right? We can think of Neptune as ghosts, for example. I don't know if you've ever seen a ghost. I think I've seen a ghost in my lifetime. And I would say that was a Neptunian experience, right? Seeing things that aren't physically there, hearing things that aren't physically there, you know, that all falls under the category of hallucination. But is it really a hallucination? I mean, it is a hallucination, but, you know, if we gained a better understanding of Neptune, we might be able to gain a better understanding of phenomena such as ghosts or such as hearing voices in your mind, right? So Neptune also rules hallucinations, so drugs, especially all of the what do we call them? Recreational drugs, you can say, because they take your mind to a different level, and you're able to view your physical reality from a more from a more spiritual perspective. So yeah, I mentioned that Neptune represents, you know, imagery, cinematography, photography, right? And so that's very into or related to television. And so when you think of television, you're watching these characters on screen. You're watching them in a two-dimensional space, and they're acting out archetypes and energies that aren't necessarily them. Unless you can say it's a reality TV show, but even reality TV shows are still directed. They are still influenced by the people behind the scenes. And so it's not completely natural. You're not completely getting to know the person behind the screen. And we can even use me for an example. You're watching me through the screen, and I'm being presented, or I'm presenting myself as a certain way. And though, you know, I feel like I'm being authentic at the moment, it's still hard for you to pinpoint who I really am, because you don't know my history. You don't know how I am on a daily basis, or what I experience, or what I go through. So there's always going to be an element, especially when you're not able to physically connect with the person or spend time with them. There's always going to be a Neptunian element involved with it. I don't think you can ever completely rid something of Neptune. There's always going to be a secret part of a human being, even when you're around them, even when you're sleeping in their bed at night. Which reminds me, Neptune also is a significator of dreams, right? Dreams is very Neptunian. Neptune rules that dream space, the place where, if you want to call it, our souls travel to, right? And so we are able to travel into this space while our physical bodies are here. So again, we have that pattern, that archetype of breaking the physical boundaries of this realm. And we're able to travel into a different space, a different time period. I don't know. I don't completely know how dreams work, right? But there's significance in it. And I wish more people explored dreams. Neptune does create, that mystery, as I was saying. Since Neptune is creating a void, it's creating a curtain, it's creating a fog, an illusion of something. It's hiding something. I guess we can take it as a literal hiding, or an artistic hiding. So for example, let's say we're looking at a house that has a deck that is rotting, right? It's a rotting deck, and you can see the rotting in the wood. But we take some white paint and we slap it on the deck, right? We paint up the deck. We cover the deck in this paint, and we cover all of the flaws. We hide the flaws, right? The flaws are still there, but we can't see them. So it's hiding the flaws, but it's not necessarily hiding the deck, right? The deck looks prettier, right? We get this, we suddenly see the deck from this rose-colored glasses. And it looks beautiful and amazing, and it makes the house look brand new. But underneath, the wood is rotting. And that's a very Neptunian example, right? So wherever Neptune is in a chart, It's creating something that's hidden, something that's missing, something that is not what it seems to be. It's moving past boundaries. It is painting an image of something that is not truly how it is in its natural state. Neptune is allowing things to transform, change form, shape shift, right? Neptune is allowing things to move and flow, you know, flow in a magical way. If you think of any Disney movie, which Disney is a very Neptunian company. If you think of any Disney movie, always has an element of magic, creating something that isn't real, or helping you imagine a space or a scenario that wouldn't happen in our daily lives. But it's giving you this image. It's making, you know, this magical experience seem real and plausible. That's Neptunian. There are tons and tons of movies that we can get into that has this Neptunian element. There are tons of examples in our everyday lives that has this Neptunian element. All right, well, that's all I have about Neptune in general. I want you to look out for my Neptune Through the Houses series. I think you'll enjoy it. And thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all when you come back. All right, have a good one. Now, this video is sponsored by Astrology Being Company. And this company mission is to illuminate the astrology inherent in art, humanity, and nature. And in order to support their mission, they sell products for astrologers or those who are interested in astrology. So right now I'm wearing one of their products. This is one of their glyph tees, and you should already know what this glyph is. But if you don't, this is the Pisces glyph, and it relates to this video that we're doing today because Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. So again, Astrology Being Company, go check them out at their website, which is www.astrologybeingco.com.